I made a little mistake at the beginning of this recording. I ended up accidentally going a little bit into this cutscene before I hit start recording button. So I hit pause about about 2.5 seconds ish in, and when the line "I begin to think Wilson" has been said. So, but this is the first piece of dialogue and the first time characters appear on the screen, so you didn't really miss anything. Going into a new chapter. So as for the previous chapter, I presume we're going to get back to it later. But what you would assume at the end from playing it is that there was one thing that was kind of brought up but brushed over. In other words, it was brought up very briefly, but then just kind of swept under the rug really quickly. And that was that Magnus McGilded's gloves had no blood on them whatsoever. So the blood on Magnus's gloves was actually fabricated. And that would indicate that that little detail is super important. If it just was kind of brought up and kind of glossed over, that's like an indication that it's super important. The more downplayed something is, the more important it is, usually in this genre of game. However, I don't really get a whole lot of meaning out of that. Like, the only implication I would have from his gloves having no blood is that Magnus did not pick up the body of McMason, whatever the brick mason's name was. He didn't pick up that body off the floor. He theoretically could have done it without getting blood on his hands, but Ace Attorney tends to be kind of like, you have to have trying to stretch the logic a bit, right? It tends to be all like, if he touched the body, he would get blood on his hands, and act like that's like a fact. Which seems to indicate that the body was never on the floor of the omnibus, and of course we would think that because the blood on the floor of the omnibus was indeed fabricated, and there tends to be this silly logic of like, well, if he didn't pick up, like, no one else besides the person if no one else besides the person you originally thought picked the body up off the floor didn't pick up the body off the floor, then that means no one could have. I don't know if I said that sentence right. But, yeah, if the person you originally thought did it didn't do it, then that means for some reason no one did it. I don't know why that is, but it tends to be like that. So, the body never was on the floor. And so, it was killed, the Mason was killed while in the seat and remained in the seat the whole time. It was never picked up off the floor. And the testimony gave by Beppo was complete and utter baloney, and it means nothing. He didn't see anything at all. So the body was never on the floor. Another thing you would assume is because the storage cabinet was full of tools, that everything that, I forgot her name exactly, it's probably something like Gina, said was also a lie. She basically just served up a whole big platter of bull poo. Like, she wasn't even there. There was likely another person in the carriage sitting in the front seat next to the Mason, but that person, as we saw in the court record, had different clothes of a different style than both Magnus and Gina. So that person wasn't either one. We'll get back to that. And she couldn't have hid underneath. So yeah, she couldn't have been there because she doesn't have fit in the picture. She couldn't have hid underneath the seat because you couldn't hide underneath the seat. There was junk in there. She wasn't even there. We'll get back to that. So we're kind of left, and if we assume, so the two witnesses, they stuck to their assertion that the person sitting on the seat next to the victim had bare hands, no gloves, and both of his hands were covered in blood. Or her, but it was probably a him, judging from the picture. So that person, of course, wasn't Magnus, because he was wearing gloves with no blood whatsoever on them. And he didn't have, if he had blood on the hands under the gloves, that would have been brought up, inevitably. So, and it wouldn't have been Gina, because she's probably not even in the story, likely. And these two witnesses were probably telling the truth because they had a lot of motivation to say that that person had gloved hands with a little bit of blood on one of them because they had a lot of motivation to frame up McGilded. But they didn't act on that motivation, and they said this anyway, even though it would not have helped frame up McGilded. So they're probably telling the truth about it. And the whole story about them dropping a body through the roof was fabricated, so they didn't do it that way. So there was somebody on the other seat with bare hands. It was not McGilded, it was blood on the hands. And I'd only assume that if he had blood on both hands, that he was the person who stabbed the victim. And he did it just the way the banker and the hatter said he did, even though they didn't really see it like they claimed. He just reached over and stabbed him. So, and he got blood on his hands in the process. I've never personally stabbed somebody, so I don't really know exactly if, like, in certain stages of inserting the knife in, you'll hit certain blood vessels and it'll spurt or whatever. But in these cases, there tends to be this assumption that if you stab somebody, you'll get blood on your hands. How this person got on the omnibus without paying is still left unknown. And how he got off is also unknown. Also, what's kind of strange about Gina is she seemed to be working with Magnus, right? She threw the smoke bomb to try to give it a window in order to alter the omnibus. She gave a testimony in support of his claims. He knew she was there in the courtroom, so he had arranged that. She apparently acted like she tried to escape the courtroom and obviously failed on purpose to do so. She gave a completely phony so she was like working for Magnus. The problem with that is there's a logo on her gun. And that logo, that like clover logo, is the same logo that we saw in the eyes of Herlock Sholmes' goggles, which they both seem to be invented by this inventor girl with pink hair, which tends to indicate that she's part of this organization associated with this inventor girl. Now, Herlock Sholmes, although he was an idiot, didn't seem to be that much of a villain-like character. But McGilded does seem to be kind of a bad guy, or a lot of a bad guy. He seems to kill people and try to mess with court procedures to manipulate the court into not convicting them. And he fabricates evidence and does things like that. So why was this person who seemed to be associated with someone who's kind of a good guy, to simplify things, be working with a bad guy? Like, Gina's demeanor even didn't really seem like she was like a bad guy. That's kind of weird. I don't really have any theories as to why exactly that was the case, but it's perplexing me. It's something I wanted to point out. Yeah, and usually the prosecutor is a good guy in Ace Attorney. Sometimes there's like a boss prosecutor on perhaps last trial that might be like a bad guy, but generally your prosecutor is somebody that kind of is an honorable person. So Van Zijk or Van Ziek, or Van Zijk, however you pronounce it, he was kind of on the right track, but yeah, you kind of feel bad for him. But he's some sort of hero of some sort. Okay, go back to this. Yeah, what I did is I accidentally clicked the continue button as opposed to the load game button, thinking it would take me to the menu of save files. But what that does is instead of taking you to the menu of save files, it just loads your most previous save, and that immediately launched me to the cutscene by accident. Okay. No, I don't want to skip it,
said Sholmes, turning his head languidly in my direction. But there is more to this case than that which we have observed. Indeed, that there may be another part to this story that we are yet to discover. His eyes wandered, following the steam rising from his cup of herbal tea, leading him to the distant memory of that snowy evening. To the young lady collapsed on the pavement along Briar Road, and to the knife in her back. Lit in the soft glow of gas lamps, a most extraordinary scene had been set. And under the cover of a light fog, the curtain had risen silently on the insoluble mystery of our invisible killer.
Did you sleep last night, Mr. Naruhodo? No, not at all. I was gonna say if that was me, I would feel terrible, but usually isn't like, if you don't sleep at all over a night, you usually don't feel I don't feel terrible. I feel this kind of this weird high feeling. But if I sleep a little bit and not enough, that makes me feel absolutely terrible. Especially the day afterwards, like 2 nights later. Then I really feel bad. It was an enormous hotel, wasn't it? The rooms were so luxurious, I felt like we were staying in a palace. And with all the gas lights twinkling, it was brighter than day, even in the middle of the night. Which... well, did you have the thick curtains? And about the enormous beds, after my time on the SS Buria, I wasn't going to waste a single inch of that space. I spent the entire night rolling from one side of the mattress to the other. Oh yes, it was the sort of night you can only dream of normally. Except, when I learned that we owed £3 for the rooms, that dream quickly turned into a nightmare. Oops, sorry about that. The building was so impressive and the entrance so inviting, I just wandered in without thinking. In a lodging house in Japan, that sum of money would put a roof over your head for a whole year. I did try, but I'm afraid I couldn't help my tears when we were presented with the bill. I really am sorry. So, what did McGilded give them? He gave them 2 coins. Don't know how much each one was, but if it was £1, then... is £3 a piece, or £3 per? Did that get them 2/3 of the way there, or 1/3? Where did they get the rest of their money from? Well, never mind. We must find some more affordable lodging straight away, though. If we're not careful, our entire stipend will be used up in 10 days or less. London is a scary place. Good morning to you at this early hour. They woke up early? Oh, yes, we're, well... Good morning to you, Lord Chief Justice. We have come to report on the outcome of the trial at the Old Bailey yesterday. Well, he probably already knows. Susato-san is amazing. She doesn't bat an eyelid, even in the presence of the imposing Lord Strongheart. Yes, I believe you had a very comprehensive initiation into British courtroom practices. Yes, it was very eye-opening. Thank you. This is kind of a crude comment, but yeah, you know, I noticed that Susato's eyes are really big and bold, with big big irises, but most of it is big and round. Lord Strongheart has more narrow eyes, and that's not exactly like the comparison. That's not like that's not how you would compare British people and Japanese people. That being said, it is an art style thing. When you draw in a Japanese art style, you draw bigger eyes. If you draw in a Western art style, you don't draw as big of eyes. But, at least they got the nose shape and brow ridges correct. And according to your instructions, Lord Strongheart, Mr. Naruhodo performed his duty to the end. Yes, I've already been apprised of events. You conducted a remarkable defense. You may consider the test passed. Oh. No longer are you a student from the Empire of Japan. You may henceforth claim to be a fully fledged lawyer. My country is delighted to welcome young talent from such a remote eastern land. Thank you very much. So I'm a lawyer now? I didn't have to go through any classes or anything? Now, in view of your new appointment, I have a fresh case in mind for you. I'd like you to take it on at once. I trust that won't be a problem. Another case, already? Nothing trains a lawyer better than practical experience. I'm sure I don't sense dissatisfaction, do I? It's just that yesterday's trial ended unusually. I haven't quite come to terms with it. What's to come to terms with? The man was cleared. What more were you hoping for? The culpability of the defendant has not, at the present time, been established by this court. Consequently, the jury will not be required to proffer judgment. Well, Lord Von Zykes, it's been a pleasure, so it has. As for you, my dear fella, I couldn't have asked for a better defense. Just can't help wondering if Mr. McGilded really was innocent. Mr. Naruhodo, it's just that I never managed to ascertain the truth. And then the trial ended. Well, you needn't let that trouble you for a second longer. Sorry? What do you mean, Lord Strongheart? Agnes McGilded passed away immediately following the trial. Oh, that is a very Ace Attorney thing to do. Did he get burned in the carriage? But we still want to know the truth, though, even if he's dead. So, no. What? Mr. McGilded is dead? There go the doves. I have 19 minutes and 41 seconds until my next engagement. Time enough to talk. Just look at all the naughty books packed together on these shelves. They go from floor to ceiling. And they're all books that you couldn't hope to come by in Japan. This is the same dialogue. I'm gonna try to click through this. And then we have just one more thing here. We, of course, already read all this. I'm just making it give me red check marks because you got to be thorough. Okay. Yeah, these don't give me any more information. Can't do the chair. The Bema seat. Now access what the judge sits in. Okay. Strongheart, may I show you this? To accept this item, ensue a receipt, examine it thoroughly, and make a formal statement of my findings. Would require something in the region of 24 seconds of my time. Sorry? Does the item warrant 24 seconds of my time, Mr. Naruhodo? Let's leave it for now. Okay. Now we can do the converse. I don't understand what happened. How can he be dead? After the trial concluded yesterday, there was a great commotion in the Old Bailey. As you'll presumably recall, an omnibus had been wheeled into the courtroom. Yes, of course, that was the scene of the crime which Mr. McGilded had been accused of. Precisely. Well, while the bailiff's attention was diverted by some other matter, the omnibus went up in flames. No. How could such a thing have happened? That is being investigated as we speak, but already... The police have identified a corpse found inside the charred shell of the carriage as that of Mr. McGilded. That's awful. The man must have slipped inside whilst the bailiff's attention was elsewhere. The bailiff really needs to pay more attention. And how could that have happened? That is also being investigated as we speak. Thinking back now, immediately after the trial, Mr. McGilded did mention going back into the courtroom to look at the omnibus. An inspection of the omnibus? Not to my knowledge, I don't believe Scotland Yard had any intention of re-examining the carriage. Oh. But then who was Mr. McGilded talking about? Never mind that now, the Yard is making a thorough investigation. This matter is no longer any concern of yours, leave it to the police. Poor Mr. McGilded. So, how did you find your first taste of our country's Supreme Court? I don't know. I mean, wow. Mr. Naruhodo means that the whole experience was steeped in the solemnity of Great Britain's long history. It's really a world apart from our own judicial system in Japan, which is only a few short decades old. That's very buttery of you. Wow, Susato-san has such a way with words. And I wouldn't have believed a minute of what she said. And you seem to have a way of failing to find the right ones. Yes, she just read our mind. The judicial system here is the most advanced in the world, learn as you can. I don't know if advanced really is a compliment for a judicial system. The most advanced in the world, is it? And we do things like let the evidence get tampered with and get lit on fire, and people get lit on fire inside the evidence in the courtroom, and have jurors that are just idiots and all kinds of stuff like that. It was fortunate that your very first trial was a simple affair. Simple? That was simple? As I believe I mentioned yesterday morning, it was a trial you couldn't lose. I don't mean to be contrary, Lord Strongheart, but the case was anything but simple. Circumstances of the case were so incriminating, I was stunned when I first heard them. In fact, I'm still finding it hard to believe that we managed to get a favorable verdict. Why am I reading this in a deep voice when it's Ryanosuke? Because I'm not paying attention to who's saying things, that's why. Is something funny? Oh no, my apologies. However, the fact is that you did receive the not guilty verdict you set out to achieve. And that can only be attributed to exceptional talent, wouldn't you agree? Well, you take things very... What? Are you... Are you the culprit in the last trial? This was a turn on here. Well, I don't know about that. This guy's rather suspicious. Well, never mind. You exceeded my expectations, I freely admit. That much at least is an undeniable truth. Which is precisely why I've prepared the new case for you that I mentioned before. What's going on? What is he going to say before? Could you perhaps give us some more details about the new case you mentioned? Don't tell me it's a murder and the trial starts in 10 minutes. Here we go. Don't worry, it's nothing so alarming or quite as urgent as your last assignment. In fact, this case is completely different. No, it's gonna be a murder because it's Ace Attorney, but okay, we'll roll with it so far. Did he just read my mind? That is to say, no one has died. As yet. And the trial will not be today. There is plenty of time to research the case thoroughly. 23 hours, 43 minutes, and 19 seconds to be precise. So the trial's tomorrow then. Is everything alright? Yes. I'm just a little confused, that's all. Yesterday's trial was... Well, it's left me wondering if I'm really cut out for being a lawyer. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, I don't know if I could face standing in that courtroom again after Mr. McGilden's trial. Oh yes, I nearly forgot. There is one similarity with yesterday's case. Once again, there is currently no one to advocate for the defense. Oh. If the situation remains unchanged, the trial will start tomorrow with the defendant unrepresented. And if that happens, I need not remind you of the inevitable outcome. As master of puppets here, the most terrible end awaits the defendant. Yes, that is right. The most advanced judicial system in the world, isn't it? Ah, here we go again. Your time is up. You will have to excuse me. I would advise you to begin making preparations for tomorrow's trial. After all, the clock is ever ticking. There is now but 23 hours, 26 minutes, and 39 seconds until the court sits. Last time I mentioned the 23 hours, he said there was plenty of time. And one more thing, Mr. Naruhodo. There is something I should like to ask you. What's that? Yesterday, you remarked upon something. That you intend to see through the will of your late compatriot, Mr. Asogi. I would be interested to hear what exactly you mean by that. Inside 34 seconds. Well, Kazuma always used to say, you see, that he wanted to learn how the greatest justice system in the world works so he could change ours in Japan. Now that he's gone, I'd like to work towards that myself, and there's another thing. Oh. Another thing? Continue. On the way here, on the steamship, he said something to me. There's something very important that I have to do. Something very important? And what exactly would that be? Never had a chance to tell me. I suppose he would have done, if he'd ever made it to... You're out of time. Well, thank you for your enlightening discussion. Mr. Naruhodo, what's all this about? Mr. Asogi never once mentioned anything of the sort to me. I urge you both to focus your attentions on the matter at hand. I've taken the liberty of summoning the police inspector in charge of the case. He'll be able to apprise you of the details. How long has he been there? So, I wish you the best of luck, and bid you farewell. There's something very important that I have to do. Zuma-sama, what did you mean? I wish I knew, but honestly, he never told me. Anyway, we had better talk to the detective, don't you think? Yes, you're right. I hope I'm just imagining it, but I wouldn't say he looks pleased to see us at all. Some potato wedges there. Did we trouble you? Do you think? Lovely weather, isn't it? What's the weather got to do with anything? Listen to me, you young Japanese upstart. Some frippery about the weather doesn't get every English gentleman eaten out of your hand, you know. Susato-san told me it was foolproof. I'm a busy man. I'm a very busy man. There's a crime scene to investigate, but I'm here having to give you the likes of you a talking to. Oh, I'm ever so sorry. Can you imagine what the other officers there will be saying? Haven't seen Gregson anywhere, have you? No, he's too busy with the bigwigs these days. And all because of some bumpkin we see her on a jaunt from a country I've never even heard of. Hear the ripping sound? That's my reputation at the yard going to tatters. That's some serious nativism going on here. There's no need to rip us apart as well. I don't believe we've been introduced. This is Mr. Ranosuke Naruhodo, a defense lawyer. Eh? It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I'm Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. Eh? It's lovely weather you're having today, isn't it? It is unseasonably fine, I grant you. London winters don't see a lot of sunshine. Unbelievable. How'd you pull that off? Lord Strongheart has asked me to fill you in on the case. The name's Tobias Gregson. Inspector Gregson to you. I'm from Scotland Yard. Gregson? Inspector Gregson? What's the matter with Susato-san? Does this detective's name mean something to her? Inspector, are you perhaps the Inspector Gregson? You're acting like you know this man, Miss Susato, but he's a London detective. Oh, I do know him. Very well, in fact. Very well? Yes, he features prominently in the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Or Sherlock Sholmes. Oh, is that in that publication? It's called again Rand's Magazine? That's right, Inspector Gregson and Mr. Sholmes enjoy a wonderful friendly rivalry. Really? You rival the great Mr. Sholmes? That's incredible. Oh, well, I don't know about that. Mr. Sholmes isn't a professional like myself, of course, but he does come up with the goods from time to time. Mr. Sholmes is equally complimentary about you, Inspector, isn't he? You've earned his highest praise. Gregson is the pick of a bad lot of all the Scotland Yarders. Those were his own words. That's his highest praise? Well, Mr. Sholmes isn't particularly known for giving compliments, you see. That he is not. And thanks to that magazine, my name's known all over London town now. That's great, isn't it? Humph. I have to admit that to start with, I was a little, well, flattered by all the attention. Everyone wanted to shake my hand, and my reputation at the yard went through the roof. Well, that's wonderful. No, it's not. There's nothing more sinister than the man on the street. People are always looking at me now. They're whispering rumors about me under their breath, I'm sure. Rumors? Are you quite sure? He's changed since he started appearing in those stories. The fame's gone to his head, stuff like that. Gosh, do you really think people are saying such mean-spirited things about you? Like I said, I'm paranoid. They whisper, I can't catch exactly what they're saying, but I know what folks are like. I'm sure that's what they're saying. I'm sure as eggs is eggs. I get the feeling this detective could be I got the feeling this detective could be very hard work. Oh. Oh dear, perhaps the sudden rise to fame does change people. So, about the case that the Lord Chief Justice mentioned before. Nothing to tell, really. As far as we're concerned at the yard, it couldn't be simpler. Oh dear, that probably means that as far as we're concerned as lawyers, it couldn't be more complicated. I wish you were wrong about that, but I have a nasty feeling you're right. A young woman was walking along the pavement on Briar Road when she was stabbed from behind. Fortunately, it wasn't fatal, but she's still laid up in the hospital unconscious. That's despicable. What sort of coward would attack the poor woman from behind? I suppose you would have finished whoever it was off with this sort of takedown, would you? That is neither here nor there, Mr. Naruhodo. Brace yourself, Ranosuke. You've angered her now. Anyway, after something of a whirlwind investigation, the criminal was arrested. He barely had time for a cup of tea after the incident took place, to be honest. So there must have been something left at the scene that led you directly to the culprit. Or perhaps a reliable witness who recognized the person in question? Let me stop you right there. You're wasting your time on this one. Sorry? There's nothing you can do. There is no way to help the bloke now. Why ever not? Simple. The prosecutor that's been assigned to the trial tomorrow is Lord Bartok von Zykes. Well, that's very not useful. Of course he is. Oh, sounds like you've heard of him then. Oh yes, we are very familiar with Lord Van Zykes. Believed to be the harbinger of death itself. Reaper of the Bailey. Dude, why are you so scared? Lord Bartok von Zykes, who we faced in court only yesterday. Mr. McGilden told us about him before the trial, didn't he? Van Zykes stands for the prosecution. They call the accused his sacrificial lambs. And in every single trial in which he's been the prosecutor, the accused has been damned. Except the one we just had. This Reaper of the Bailey's nickname. I suppose he's earned that because every defendant he advocates for is found guilty. Is that it? Well, if that's the case, we should inform you, Inspector, that in yesterday's trial against Lord Van Zykes, Mr. Naruhodo secured a victory of not guilty. And what of it? Oh, well, statistically, that's not very significant, is it? That means that even against the Reaper of the Bailey, it's not impossible to save the defendant. Oh, you really don't have a clue, do you? What do you mean? What happened to that bloke in the end, eh? He's dead. Ah. Magnus McGilly came a cropper in that omnibus when it went up in flames. So you can't rightly say you saved the defendant, can you? What are you saying? Look, if Van Zykes could get the dirt to stick on everyone, he'd be a miracle worker. But that's not how it goes. He doesn't work miracles. He works magic. Black magic. I've had a good long think about that if I were you. Oh. Are we really supposed to believe that? That gave me a little thinky. I sort of doubt it. Right, well, I filled you in as requested, and I'm very nearly out of chips. Or it's the sort of thing where, like, you never really confirm or deny it. It's like, why would you order a second autopsy report? Was the second autopsy report a little bit fudged? We never know, right? So we'll never know if Van Zyk's killed McKilled it. So I'll be heading back to the crime scene now. We're still carrying out a few investigations there. It was Briar Road, you said, didn't you, where the incident took place? That's correct, ma'am. And if you were to head over to the holding cells, you can meet the criminal himself. You've branded him a criminal already? He's as good as, shaking like a leaf in his cell he is. It'll give you a chuckle if nothing else. He's inmate 53. Speak to the jailer, and he'll show you the way. Inmate 53. Thank you. So there's no helping anyone against the Reaper of the Bailey, they say. Is something troubling you, Mr. Naruhodo? To tell the truth, when I recall the trial yesterday, I can't stop myself from shaking. The idea of facing the Reaper in court again is... Well, if you think it's too much for you, there's no shame in turning the case down. That takes courage, too. Well, to be honest, Van Zyk's really didn't say much in court. But if the man we've arrested is innocent, you could well imagine he would be shaking like a leaf in his cell. And I, for one, wouldn't find the sight of that funny. So, if I'm honest, I'm still reeling from the shock of yesterday's events myself. And I'm really not sure if I'll be able to help this man, whoever he is. But I'd like to try, so I think I'm going to make some inquiries. Will you help? Did you really think you had to ask? After all, I'm your judicial assistant. Thank you. So then, shall we? Let's go. But I could still examine. Okay. So these are British prison cells. Oh, they're ghastly. It feels like a dungeon. Yes, and having experienced it in Japan myself, I can assure you that our wooden cells feel a lot cozier than these cold stone walls. Oh, don't, Mr. Naruhodo, you're making it seem worse. Apparently, our client is in this cell here, but it's so dark in the back there, I can't make him out. I wonder what he's like. Inmate 53, your legal representative is here to see you. Stop idling in the back of the cell and show your face at once. Am I a cat, as yet with no name? Calling me by a number? It's utterly, unbelievably, unjustly unreasonable. I refuse to answer. Mr. Naruhodo, what? What do you think is going on here? I have no idea, but I wasn't just hearing things, was I? That tirade of complaints was in Japanese. Oh, well, I wouldn't know. His sprite is very poorly drawn. Excuse me, but... Quiet. They're all around hiding. They know they are. I know they are. They're watching, listening. Even now, I can sense it. Right. So, could I ask you who exactly? There you are. You've come to curse me, haven't you? Don't try to hide it. You're a ghost. A ghost? Mean you no harm, prisoner-san. Are you Japanese by any chance? This is beyond my wildest dreams. Forgive me for that outburst before, I'm so sorry. Oh, it's fine, we were just a little surprised, that's all. Imagine it. It's been 12 long months since I left my hometown, and here I am in a frightful fix in a foreign land. So hearing the sweet, sentimental tones of a compatriot's voice here in this damp, dark hellhole was a monumentally moving moment. Could have guessed this new client Lord Strongheart assigned to us would turn out to be a fellow Japanese. What compassion my fellow countrymen show to dispatch a first-class lawyer all the way from Japan to defend a mere foreign student. Noble, nurturing, never failing... Oh. First-class lawyer? Oh dear, I think here's been something of a misunderstanding here. I wonder, would you be so kind as to tell us what's happened? Why you've been detained as a suspect, for example? Yes, I can, I will. Shan't stay sullen and silent. I'm not quite sure I understand what he means, but he seems happy. Yes, he does. I just hope he actually has a good reason to be. Thank you for your cooperation. I am a lawyer, as you said. My name is Ryanosuke Naruhodo. And I am Naruhodo-san's judicial assistant, Susato Mikotoba. I am a visiting student sent here by our government. Notably, notoriously named Natsume. Soseki Natsume. Yes, the symbol of one of our great empire's first-rate lawyers. Which means, of course, you'll stand by my side, you'll defend me. No, sorry, that wasn't why I was showing it to you. Then why else would you show me that? Oops, in hindsight, that probably wasn't the best idea. That's kind of meta. To get the funny dialogue. Susetu Natsume-san. What an unusual name. Call me Soseti, please. I'm a poet, you see, a writer of haiku. It's something of a nom de plume. A nom de plume? You mean an alias? That's right, Naruhodo-san. No, don't be so prosaic. It is much more refined than that. And haiku, that really reminds me of home. Did I hear you say that you were a visiting student sent over here by the government? Yes, that's right. A year ago I was told to go and study English. First I had to suffer that misery, and now this. It's beyond the pale. Suffer that misery? Did you want to study here? No, I mean, I've had an interest in Great Britain for some years, of course. Oh? But... just because the government tells you to do something doesn't mean you can do it, no? What do you mean? If they told me to study English literature, that I could have understood. That's my field. But no, they told me to study the English language. Utterly, unbelievably, unjustly unreasonable. I see. Only the other day I was told to send a report about my first year here. I tendered a blank piece of paper. Wise words on whitewashi. You must be a man of great standing. Oh yes, so I'm often told. And often like to be told, it seems. Could you perhaps tell us exactly why you've been arrested, Soseki-san? I didn't do it. I didn't commit that atrocious murder. Murder? Oh no, it's alright. The woman didn't actually die, did she? She was stabbed with a knife, right before my eyes. Before your eyes? You mean you saw the attacker? I didn't see anyone. What? If I'd seen the person who did it, do you think I'd be locked up in here? Oh dear, it seems this case is becoming rather complicated. Why me? Why me? Why did that silly woman have to be stabbed in front of me? It's the curse of London. It's incredibly, inexcusably, irritatingly inconvenient. So Soseki-san was there at the scene, but he didn't see the attacker. It's vital that we find out more about the case. It was an accursed evening, just after the snow had started to clear and heavy with fog. I've been to the bookshop to buy some books, and I was on my way back to my accursed lodgings. Sure, the bookshop wasn't accursed too. And as I was walking along that accursed pavement, I could make out the sole silhouette of another ahead of me. A woman wearing a green overcoat she was, and just as I went to overtake her, she suddenly let out a scream and collapsed onto the cold, hard slab of stone at my feet. How terrible. I called out to the woman, but she didn't move. It was like a ghostly, ghoulish, grim graveyard. Slight exaggeration here, perhaps. I was terrified I had to get away from there, so I ran as fast as my legs would carry me back to my accursed lodgings. That's not good. They'll say it was shameful, I know, I run away like that. Tell me, Soseki-san, was the victim an acquaintance of yours? Don't be ridiculous. Do you think I know any of these fair-haired English? And a young woman at that? I'm different, shy, timid, unsure. I can't talk to people. I see, a young woman unknown to Soseki-san. And at the time it happened, who else did you see nearby? Did anyone pass you? Regrettably, apart from myself and the woman, I didn't see a soul. No one. Oh, great. So the victim was unknown to you, and there was nobody else on the street at the time, so now you have a mechanism or a throwing or something. That creates something of a conundrum, doesn't it? What conundrum? What do you mean, Susato-san? What's the conundrum? Well, if what Soseki-san has told us is true, there's something I can't explain. He says that he didn't know the victim, and that there was no one else at the scene. Then he apparently fled without having been seen. I did. But if that's the case, surely this man has to be the culprit. Ah, you... What did you just say? Nothing, I didn't say anything. Oops, perhaps I thought that a little loudly. Actually, that's not what was troubling me. What I was thinking was, how did Soseki-san actually come to be arrested? Sorry? He didn't touch the victim, and there was nobody at the scene to see him. So how did the police ever discover that he was there in the first place? Oh yes, she's right. It was him. That accursed great detective. He led the police to me. Of all the bad luck. Accursed great detective. Could it be? I shall never forget that man's name as long as I live. With his haughty laugh and his self-proclaimed greatness. Brash, big-headed, busybody, begone. May you be cursed until the end of your days, Herlock Sholmes. Knew it. Mr. Sholmes? Well, I didn't expect to hear that name from this man's lips, that's for sure. But you said I knew it. It was the morning after that nightmare had unfolded on the pavement before me. I was gnawing at a sliver of hard cheese when some men suddenly burst into the door. They started shouting at me, "This is the police, put the weapon down." Yes, it was a thin sliver, and yes, it was hard. I wasn't eating a weapon. Disgusting dietary discrimination devils. You clearly had a trying morning yesterday. And there he was, in the middle of all the policemen, grinning like a Cheshire cat. That Sherlock Sholmes. It's actually just Sherlock Sholmes, in English. I've since found out that he's a famous name in detection here in London. Yes, the great detective is really very well known. And his overly sharp mind managed to deduce my whereabouts, apparently. He thinks I'm the knife-wielding madman, me, this week's stooped kitten of a man. I wonder what great deduction process led him to his conclusion this time. Do you mean to say that Mr. Sholmes' deduction was the only reason the police arrested you? That would be really most unreasonable. The thing is, I was thrown into a panic when they barged their way in. Of course you were. That's only natural. I was terrified and trembling, and they kept throwing question after question at me in impossible English. Fiendish foreign film flammery. Well, we are in England. You can't really blame them for questioning you in English. Good point. But my mind went blank. I knew I had to answer, but I didn't know what to say. So I just kept repeating things like, "Yes, I do," and "I'm fine." The next thing I knew, I was in manacles, and before I knew it, I was thrown in here. Oh dear, I'm afraid that's hardly surprising. I'm fine. He's not fine now. Mr. Naruhodo, Esquire. Oh, you can just call me Naruhodo. And when we're speaking English, a simple Mr. is more than enough. Yes, alright, yes. They've really got to me. This country is poisoning my mind. Please, I beg you to defend me in court tomorrow. You can tell them what really happened. You'll do it, won't you? Well, why? Why is it so hard to say yes to me? The thing is, I'm just a student like yourself, on a study tour. Student? I have defended a case in the Old Bailey. Only the one, though. At this moment in time, I really don't know what I'm supposed to believe in. I'm confused about what justice in this country even means. Oh, Naruhodo-san. I'm not even the foreign student who was supposed to be here. I'm a sort of locum lawyer, I suppose. But that armband, that's the mark of a defense lawyer from our great empire. It's a keepsake for the man who should have been here. He was my best friend. A keepsake? I know exactly what they're saying about me. Oh? What do you mean? The lawyers, all the British defense lawyers, they won't defend me. Goodness, why? Why would you say that? For the same reason as you noted before. When it happened, there was only the victim and myself around, and I ran away from the scene of the crime. I'm not a fool. I know it looks as though I must be the culprit. It must be very hard for you, Soseki-san. And anyway, I'm a student from overseas. I'm just a foreign nobody to them. Someone not to be trusted. I heard them openly laughing about me before, and my earshot without any communication at all, compunction at all. Any trial for this man would be a waste of time, they said. Of course the foreigner did it. They even had the gall to say the man doesn't understand half of what's being said anyway. That's awful. They're wrong. I've studied more English than half the policemen out there in the streets. I've traveled halfway around the world to learn about these people's country and its great history. But No one here wants to listen to a man with a strange accent. They all hate me. So at the very least, I'd like to entrust my fate to someone who can listen to me in that native tongue. You could do it, couldn't you? When I look into your eyes, I can see it. I can see what you've been through. So Saki-san, it's just that... Give me a little time, please. Huh? I'll do what I can, for the time being. What do you mean? We shall investigate the case as thoroughly as possible. If we can find some clues, it will give us a much better chance, I'm sure. Oh yes, thank you. I'll be here, all alone, waiting for you. Locum student, Mr. Naruhodo, Esquire. You should be going then, Naruhodo-san. We have a case to prepare for. Okay. Save here and that will be it.